Hello. So marking dark fabric for Sashiko can feel like an uphill battle. What actually works and what just rubs off before you get your stitch in on your first row even. So today I'm going to compare these marking tools that I've used, and I'll talk about what I like and which ones I keep going back to. And on some of my videos I do talk a little bit about some of the different methods that I'm using, but this video kind of gathers everything together here. I'm going to start with the chalk pouncer. Now I have to say this is one that I don't particularly like. The problem with it is I have a little bit of cloth here and I'm just going to rub this chalk pouncer on that little cherry blossom. So it's extremely quick and easy to put on there, but it fades really quickly. It's a very thick line, so not good for intricate patterns, and it's very messy. So before I even get anywhere on stitching, the whole thing is just about gone. It just disappears way too quickly. And I have a similar problem with some other chalk things. This is another chalk product. I mean, this is not designed for Sashiko. It's more for dressmaking. Nevertheless, it's something that you think that you might use. It kind of, draws a little bit of a line there. But again, it's just going to brush off. It's not the right thing. I had the same kind of result using a Sashiko liner. So these things have their own place, but they're not the best for Sashiko. Another one I was going to show you is this one. So this one is a pastel rather than a chalk. And I haven't actually used this for Sashiko. Do you ever buy things and then just forget them, or is it just me? So I'll have to give this a proper try and see how long it lasts. But as you see, it draws quite a nice line on there, and I think that's actually quite good. So that might be one that I use. I'll have to experiment some more and see how long it lasts, and also to see how I remove the markings afterwards. Like others, I suspect they'll fade. I have similar white pencils, and these are meant for marking on fabric, and I kind of have mixed results with these. In a lot of ways, they're quite difficult to get onto the fabric. So this is just cotton fabric, so in this case it might go on here fairly easily. The ruler here, let's draw some lines and see. On denim though, these are very difficult to mark a line. So see, I tried 3 different ones there. This last one is the only one that really showed up very much. I'm rubbing over them to see. It's fading quite quickly. The other 2 are gone completely. So again, those are not good choices for Sashiko. One unusual thing that you might not know about is soap. So what you can do is you can take an old piece of soap, sharpen it to an edge and draw on your fabric with that. That makes quite a good line. It stays on quite well, and really it's quite a good option. And afterwards it'll just wash out, or I have actually seen people iron on that. Your soap does need to have quite a sharp edge though, and I use this. Now this is not really what this was meant for. It's some kind of a little Dritz tool, but it's pretty good for just sharpening the edge of the soap. So I've used that before, and that works quite well. Have you seen one of these before? This is a Hera marker. Now this is really popular. This one is Clover, Japan, and I know that they use these a lot in Japan. I've seen a lot of videos where they're being used, but I cannot get on with this at all. The way that it's used is, let me get my little ruler here. Just a straight line is drawn, and that shows on the fabric. But for me, I just can't see that to work from. So I bought one to use, but actually I don't use it. Just trying it again there. It does make a kind of a crease on there, but it's so faint. There's no way I personally could stitch along that line. My eyesight's not good enough for that, especially not on dark fabric like this. But if you can use this, then it's a great tool. You don't have to worry about taking any markings off at the end. Everything will already be clean and ready to go when you finish doing your stitching. So that is another option. Now, heat erasable pens, I do like those. This is a new set that I've just bought for just marking on regular white or pale fabric. But the white ones for the dark fabric I do really like. White is really the only colour that shows up on here on the dark cloth. And even then, the results do vary a bit between brands. Some blot. I've tried some different brands as well. This is one that I've had. I've had some Jousis ones, which I had this one originally, and I always was pleased with that. That one worked quite well. And I sent for some new ones thinking I was getting the same, but these are still the same brand, but they are a little different. Now this one does blot a little bit, this one didn't. Up to now though, that's not bothered me. The blot does come off pretty easily. The only thing about the white erasable pens is they don't show up instantly when you're trying to make your mark. So a couple of times I have been fooled into thinking that there wasn't a line there and that the pen was empty. And actually, if I'd have just waited a few minutes, I would have been able to see that there was a line there. Now, as you can see, this one did show up almost straight away. It has got a bit brighter with time, but I really like it for that. That one is a good one. I'm going to continue to buy those. I've got chalk all over this. People sometimes mention the lines might reappear in cold temperatures, especially the white ones or the coloured ones, but I haven't had that happen. And of course the heat of an iron makes those lines disappear. But what I find is that as you're working on the fabric, it seems like no matter what you use, everything fades a little. By the time you get to the end, these lines probably aren't going to show up enough where you need to worry about it anyway. This is another different kind. This one is actually a washout, and they do actually tell you to try these on a piece of cloth before you use them. I actually think that's good advice for any of these pens. Let me just mark a line on this piece of scrap fabric. Again, it's a little bit slow to show, and this is actually a thicker line, and I think you can see that that's a thicker nib on this marker. And the problem with that is that if you're using a template or a stencil, it can be a little bit difficult sometimes to go through the... I'm just going to turn this over and use the other side, so I've got a clean side here. It can be a little bit difficult sometimes, depending on the stencil, to get through the markings. It's barely, let's see, having to press quite hard to make sure I touch the cloth. But it is getting through. But it just depends what stencil you're using. On these thinner plastic ones, it works quite well, but there are some that are acrylic and are thicker, and I've not been able to use those with one of these kind of a pens. The line is bright and easy to follow. I particularly like this one for marking jeans, but every Sashiko project you do isn't one you might want to wash. Like the others, this will fade somewhat as you're stitching on the pattern. Another of my favourite things is a ceramic pencil. This is one of my favourite pencils. I've been using this the most ever since I started doing Sashiko. It's actually a ceramic. I tend to call it lead because it reminds me of a lead pencil, the kind that you refill. So it has these little, these are the little leads, I'm going to call them, that go inside. You just drop them in there and then click it down and begin to use it. And it draws quite a nice line. It's not as bright as some of the others. It lasts quite well, but it will fade. If it's a very complicated pattern, as you're moving it around, it will fade. But it's pretty easy just to go on there and go over the line again. You know, if you see it fading away, just go over it again. And I would say that with all of your projects, really. You have to keep an eye that it's not fading too much where you're not going to be able to see it. So it does rub off, but it's a really nice fine line. And I like how consistent it is. Now the last one I'm going to show you here is a little different because this is transfer paper. I have two kinds of this. This is the original that I had. This is Olympus carbon paper and it's white. So I'll pull a piece out here so that you can see what that's like. You can see I've used this loads. There's a lot of markings on there if they show up on camera. So this waxy feeling side, that's the side that goes to your fabric. So you put that down on your one you want to mark on. Now you have to have some kind of a pattern for this. This is a butterfly design I've been working on. So I just cut some butterflies, put them in a circle. It's not actually quite finished yet, but that's what I'm currently working on. So I would place that where I want it to be. You can either pin it in place, or if you think you can hold it in place and not let it move, you can do that. It's really safer to pin it. And then you just need an old pen of some kind, like this little old Bic biro pen, and you just draw on the lines. I'm not actually going to draw it on here, but you do have to press pretty hard with this particular one for it to show up. I remember when I first got it, the lines didn't show, and I had to call the lady that I bought it from, and she said, "Yeah, you're just not pressing hard enough." So, and it was right, I had to just press harder. So this works really well. Again, if you're working on it a lot, it may fade, and you may need to use one of your other pencils just to reinforce the lines so that you can see them until you get your stitching done. So I've always been happy with that. Some people call this transfer paper, but the actual package itself, it's by Olympus. It is a Japanese paper. They do call it carbon paper. And I have another version of this, which I've only just started using. And this one, they do name transfer paper. And this is for embroidery and Sashiko. Shows it on the label there. Now this feels very different. I have a piece I've pulled out here. It feels more like tracing paper. It's kind of brown on one side and a little bit lighter on the other, but it doesn't look very white. Still, you use it in exactly the same way. The lighter side goes down to the fabric, put your pattern on there, draw over it with the pen, and it works just fine. This gives a very nice fine line, they both do, to work on, and I like the fine lines, especially if you're doing an intricate pattern. You don't want to be working on something that's thick. So if it looks like it's fading, I will just go over it again. One tip I do when I'm using this is, sometimes I use a biro that's actually just run out and has got no ink in it, but sometimes I do get one in a colour, so perhaps a green one. That way, when I'm marking, I can tell which parts I've already marked. So for me, the ceramic pencil and the heat erasable pencil are the ones that I like the best. If I have this kind of a design where it's on paper, then I'll go ahead and use one of these carbons. I find I can stitch confidently without worrying that my markings are going to vanish like they might with the chalk. But no one tool works best for everyone. So really it comes down to your stitching style, the fabric you're using. That does make a difference. And whether it's very intricate, how long are you going to be working on it? So you'll try a few different ones yourself, I'm sure, and you'll see which one fits you. So I hope this video was helpful. Let me know if you have a preference for which marking tools you like to use. There are so many on the market now. Lots of different ones for us all to try out. Thanks for watching.